Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabreielle Zevin. I don't have the book to hold up today because it was actually my mum's book. I bought it for her. She read it, she liked it, she gave it to me to read. I kept it for like a year and a half and then I finally read it when I visited her in Glasgow and left it there because it's time to be returned to her owner. I didn't just buy myself a book and let her borrow it. It's the other way around. Because otherwise it's just like I bought myself a present and that wouldn't be very great, would it? This book was one of like the biggest books of 2022 or 2023, but it's taken me a couple of years to get around to it. I wasn't like overly sold on reading it myself at first. That's kind of why I bought it for my mum, because I was like, I've heard this is really good. I'm not sure, but I'll buy it for her and see if she likes it, and she did. So that convinced me to read it. Didn't get around to it, and then it was made the book club pick for my work book club, and I was finally forced to, and thank God I was. This book is a little bit hard to describe apart from saying like it's about two friends that make video games together over many years. The back of the book is just kind of like, this is about love and grief and betrayal and all of the things that makes you human, and that's kind of the truth. It's just kind of about that. This book is titled Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow after a soliloquy in Macbeth. It's from the beginning of that famous soliloquy that ends up with, life is a poor player that struts and frets around a stage. It's a tale that's told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. In this novel, Sam and Sadie, our main characters, are poor players. They do strut and fret around a stage. They are not always perfect people, and they sometimes behave in ways that aren't so great. There is a lot of sound and fury, and in the end it's like, what was it all for? I should probably say spoiler alert, because I am going to be talking about the big spoilery events of this novel, so if you haven't read it, go away, read it and come back. This is a book club where I've read the book, you've read the book, and now we're dissecting it together. You've had your warning, now go before I spoil the ending. In the end, we see that Sam and Sadie are kind of where they were at the beginning of the novel, and that's because this book is about tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. It's kind of about the cyclic nature of life. Life goes on and on and on, and we continue to be poor players, and we strut and fret around the stage until we are no more. And by the end of this book, Sam and Sadie are still alive, and so they're still strutting and fretting around the stage. And I get the impression they're going to continue to do so. They're going to continue to work together, work well, make good products, become better, resent each other, stop talking, miscommunicate, make mistakes, make bad relationship decisions, maybe make some good ones, have some good moments, have some bad moments, until it all comes to an end. Because that's what the rest of this book is about. Sam and Sadie meet in the hospital when they're children. Sam's going through a really traumatic time and hasn't really spoken, but Sadie goes in and talks to him about video games. This is kind of Sam's way of coping with his trauma, as he just plays video games all of the time. I think this novel really showed what video games can mean for people. I think a lot of people are very dismissive of gaming as it being like a stupid teenage boy thing that they do. They play shooters and it's all very silly, but games have a lot of diversity. They're not all shooters, and sometimes they have like things to say. They have political things to say. Sometimes they're just about being fun. Sometimes they're really expansive worlds, and sometimes they're really basic little puzzle games. And just like books or films or TV shows, like, it's a story, it's a narrative, it's a game, it's like board games, it's like art, it's a hobby, it's an escape, and it's important to people. It's important to Sam and Sadie, and it helps them in a world where they struggle to make other friends. Sadie struggles to make friends. Sam struggles to make friends as well. Andy's struggling with his disability and his grief. And video games are a gift to them. Now they form a really good little friendship. It's very wholesome. But Sadie makes quite a crucial error in logging it for her bat mitzvah community service, which then causes them to fall out because Sam feels very betrayed when he finds this out, and they go their separate ways, only to then meet again in college and decide to rekindle their friendship and very quickly jump into a working relationship where they're making games together. Starts out kind of fun, but also like pretty serious. Like they develop this game, it's really good, they go on to sell it and basically create a whole company. They don't even finish their degrees, or at least Sadie doesn't. They just end up learning on the job of making games and really making a name for themselves doing this. They do this with the help of Sam's roommate, Marks, who is like the best character in the book. He is so lovely, he's so positive. He's so positive that when he wants to break up with people, he's able to like convince them that it's their idea and therefore stay good friends and stay very amicable. He's a little bit manipulative in that way, but it doesn't come from a bad place at all. Like he manipulates Sam into like taking this hand-me-down coat from him because he says, oh, I got it, it was the wrong size, and he just left it to the side, when really he like literally bought it for Sam and then made it look like he was doing Marks a favour by taking it, even though Marks was doing him the favour the whole time. Because that's just the kind of guy Marks is. He's a good guy, he wants to take care of Sam, he worries about him, sees him like a little brother, and knows that he won't accept the help any other way. So he's not a perfect guy, he's a little bit dishonest, but he is lovely and the best character. He becomes a producer, he helps them by giving them an apartment, helps them come up with ideas, and kind of keeps things like smooth between them. When Sam and Sadie miscommunicate with each other, he's quite good at bridging the gap and keeping things fairly functional. He's even quite good at manipulating both of them to move to California for each other so that Sam can get the surgery that he needs and so that Sadie can get away from this toxic, grooming, pretty abusive boyfriend who's her professor at college. He was a piece of shit. I really didn't enjoy like reading that aspect of the book and how he was treating Sadie. It was really hard to see how he was treating her and see her like continue to stay with him and go back to him anyway, purely out of loneliness or later because she felt like she kind of needed him professionally. It said a lot about sexism in the gaming industry at that time. I'm sure today as well, but it was worse at that time in the 90s. But it also said a lot about Sadie's character and showed that she wasn't a perfect person either. She does make a lot of mistakes and then she's bitter and angry at other people, mainly Sam, because of choices that she herself has made. Like when the games become successful and they're released, Sam goes out to promote them because he's really good at it and Sadie isn't so good at it. She doesn't want to do it anyway. And because Sam does this, people automatically see it as his game. They kind of discredit her even though she's the main developer. And then she gets really bitter about this. And this doesn't just happen one time, it happens multiple times. She does go out and promote it at one point, but it doesn't do quite as well. And then she's really still bitter about Sam about this, even though it's kind of her shortcomings. Often she sees Sam as someone that is taking advantage of her or not really a true friend to her, when we see both of their perspectives and see that that's not really true, but that Sam kind of struggles to just say that he loves her as a friend. It's really frustrating, but I didn't get annoyed like I normally do with miscommunication tropes because I didn't feel like it was just put in there to add conflict or tension to a book that like didn't have it otherwise. I feel like that miscommunication was what this book was about. It was about their flaws and them just being like whole-rounded human characters. It was very convincing. I think that's the issue with most communication in other books that annoys me, is that it's very silly and doesn't seem realistic, when I'm just like, you could literally just say, or you know, there's a letter but it blows away and then it doesn't get read. I'm like, oh, that was such an easy fix. Or like they just missed the phone call. Like these feel like plot devices. Like you can see the writer going, I need to accomplish this, so I will do this, and then I don't believe it, and so it annoys me. Whereas in this is like the characters, they are full fleshed out people, and this is like truly what they would do. This is truly the mistakes that they are making, and it's frustrating, but in a way that I believe. So I thought it was very well done. Going back to the title of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, it isn't just about, you know, these poor players strutting and fretting around the stage. It's also about mortality and how in video games you die and you come back and you come back and you come back. There's always more chances. And life's a little bit like that too. Like, you can fail and fail at games and still come back, and there's still more chances to do life. There's still more chances to repair relationships. There's always tomorrow until there isn't. And when life is done, it's done. And we see that in the character of Marx. When he dies later in the book, we get this very beautiful chapter from the second person perspective, all about Marx and his life and his death. We flash between some of his memories, some of his life, and the day and the event in which he dies, and him lying in the hospital afterwards where he's in a coma, but you know, we're led to believe that he's got some awareness because he's seeing what's happening, or his spirit is seeing what's happening. And we get this beautifully written sequence of him departing, his soul departing from this world. This was super emotional, and seeing such a good character, a good guy like Marx, lose his life over like politics that, like, by today's standards are like, it feels silly, like that people were so homophobic that they would go to shoot up an office based on like gay marriage in a video game. And obviously we see the shooter's perspective that his wife had left him for a gay partner, and that's probably that pain was rooted in his decision, but it still feels senseless and tragic and very true to life, and how violence is so senseless, and good lives full of potential can just sometimes end, and it's very unjust and unfair. And it's the sound and fury of that soliloquy. It signifies nothing. Like, his death was for nothing, it signified nothing, and that's kind of how death is in real life. Most people don't die for like a greater cause. It's usually just kind of their time, or it's, you know, murder and it's very unfair, or it's an illness and it's very unfair. And it's usually not like it is in epic movies and epic books, fantasies. Even though Marx was labelled as a bit of an NPC, he had such a strong impact on those around him. He had such a positive impact. He had such a beautiful way of looking at the world. I really love that line where Sadie says, you know, he seen the tree with the permission fruit in their garden of their new house, and suddenly the permission was his favourite fruit. And she was like, he's never mentioned that before. I don't think it actually is his favourite fruit, but it's because it is now in his tree, in his yard, it has now become his favourite fruit. Because he has this way of just looking at things and saying, like, this thing that I have is my favourite thing and I like this. He was kind of cast in a side character in Macbeth and then not even allowed to return as a ghost. The director had the characters throw things at an empty chair signifying his ghost and didn't even bring him back. And even though this was probably a racist decision that he wasn't cast as the main character in the first place because he was Asian, and it was a bit insulting that he wasn't allowed to come back as a ghost, he has a really positive outlook on this and just says that, you know, I made such an impact in my role that even an empty chair can signify me, and that the audience will be thinking about my performance when they look at that empty chair. And that is such a beautiful way to look at life. If that had happened to Sadie, or maybe Sam, you can bet they would have had some kind of bitter take about it and would have felt betrayed, because that's kind of how they act about each other a lot of the times during this novel. But Marx doesn't do that, and he has such a positive impact on Sadie and Sam because of this attitude, and upon himself. Some might see it as like toxic positivity, but I don't think so. I think he's very good and very natural at practicing gratitude, which is kind of the key to his good mental health. It's probably what more of us could practice, to be honest. And I think if I find myself in a bit of a negative headspace in future, I'm going to think about Marx and think, what would Marx do? How would he look at this? And try to do that, because I think that's such a beautiful and healthy way of looking at the world. And it wasn't until that NPC chapter that I really appreciated that about him. Like I said before, that chapter was really well written. It was written in second person, and we had this flip between The past and the present and the event, the shooting. I really loved the entire sequence. There was many different chapters in this book that experimented with the style of writing. We had the chapter called Both Sides, where they're making a game that has two sides, and we kind of get an A and B in each of the little mini chapters within that section from Sam and Sadie's perspectives. And this is really well done because it's at a time where Sam and Sadie are not really speaking and they don't really understand each other's sides at all. Sam has just had his surgery and he's really struggling with phantom limb syndrome. Sadie, I can't remember what Sadie's deal was, but she's kind of working hard on the game, and they're also both working very separately on the same game on each side of it. I love that the written structure mimicked the plot and where the characters were in their life. I also loved the second last chapter, which is based within a video game. Sam creates a little RPG video game that he makes for Sadie with all of the features he knows Sadie will like that will bring her comfort, because she's not talking to him. She's obviously very depressed and struggling with the loss of Marks, and he doesn't know how to get through to her any other way. So he creates this game and he creates characters within the game and he interacts with Sadie via these characters. Now it's quite clear to the reader, I think, that this is Sam and Sadie, although it takes you like a few pages to figure out what's happening because you're in this kind of surreal fake video game world. But it becomes more and more clear as we go through the chapter that it's definitely Sam, particularly when Dr. Daedalus loses her hand. And the chapter is interrupted and goes to a normal style when Sadie finally realises, or she did kind of realise before this, but when it becomes undisputable that this is Sam and that she's kind of been set up. And after that, we return to the real world. I think this was like a really interesting way to tell this part of the story, especially because if Zevin had stayed in a normal style, not a lot would be happening because Sadie is so depressed she's just playing video games all day, and Sam is also just playing video games every day and maybe trying to run the company and stuff as well, but that would have been quite boring. So this was a very interesting way to tell that part of the story and tell us a bit about their mental state without spelling it out and giving us too many literal details. Now those were the most experimental chapters, but all of the other like more normal chapters had interesting literary techniques as well. I like that each main section of the book, many of them were focused on the conception of individual games, and it's like their life could be divided into the games that they were making at that time or the games they were playing. I thought all of the games they created were very inventive. I would definitely play all of them, like they all sound really interesting. I thought the idea for solution was genius. I thought Both Sides was also a genius idea. Ishigo and this concept of the child and their interpretation of language and their interpretation of the world incorporated into the game, I thought that was really interesting. Even the drought zombie game that this random other couple came up with sounded like a good idea for a game. And each of these chapters, they weren't told just straight beginning, middle and end. We stayed in the present for a lot of it, but we would constantly flash back to Sam's memories or Sadie's memories, and also flash forward to see how the game that they were making in the present had turned out, how it had become successful. We've seen Sam and Sadie being interviewed by magazines or like YouTube channels or at conferences and talking about, you know, cultural appropriation and things like that. Things that wouldn't have been a hot topic at the time that they released the game, but then in the 2010s or 2020s in the future were a talking point. Playing around with the sense of time, it really gave you the impression that like all of time was kind of happening at once, which I think also reinforces this idea of tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. The book had a lot to say about race as well. I don't think we had any characters that were just white. We had Sadie, who was Jewish, Dov was Israeli Jewish, Sam was half Jewish, half Korean, Marks was half Korean, half Japanese, and they kind of referenced that the Japanese and the South Koreans have racist feelings towards each other, which I thought was really interesting. We saw how racism affected Marks and also Sam, and they kind of touched on this idea that in the 90s, just being Asian, even though they were American Asian, was enough to make it okay that they were making Ichigo, which was very Japanese inspired, whereas in like the 2010s or the 20s, whenever the future sequence was, it was now an issue that they weren't properly Japanese and they were making Japanese games. And I thought that was a really interesting idea because I think a lot of people like the Japanese aesthetic, they like anime, they like it in artwork and in games. I can see how it would be appealing to create a game using that inspiration and that artwork, and that might come from a really innocent place but would technically still be cultural appropriation. I also thought there was good disability representation. Sam has to deal with this injury in his foot from this traumatic event that gives him trouble throughout his whole life. Even after he gets it amputated, it still causes trouble in the form of phantom limb syndrome. I think you could really see how it affected him, how he held back from maybe telling Sadie about his feelings for her, how he was constantly trying to just be normal and not make it a big deal, even while he was struggling to walk down the icy streets. He isolated and hid himself when he was dealing with the phantom limb syndrome because he didn't really want any bother or any help, and he ended up struggling through, and it affected his mental health quite a lot. We saw his reaction when someone, called his dog a coyote and was a bit, exclusionary or discriminatory towards his dog. He would take it really sensitively because that was a reflection of how he felt about himself. And he had this interesting duality about himself because when he was in front of the crowd, he could be a real showman, and he rebranded himself as Mazer, and he was like the mayor of this town in this fictional Mapletown game, and he became quite a cultural icon, whereas at home he was kind of living in squalor, like he had a mattress on the floor and he was lonely much of the time. And I thought it was interesting to see both of these sides of him. Now, I could go on and say a lot more about this book. I'm sure there's a lot more to say because it's one of those books that, you start a little bit of literary analysis and then you can just go on and on. But for now, I think that's all I'm going to say. Let me know what you thought of Tomorrow in the comments below. If you play games, let me know what your favourite video game is. I really like Skyrim because it's very chill vibes, but I also love The Last of Us because it's got an amazing story, it's got amazing gameplay, and it makes you think about like the big moral questions. And I love Spiral because it's chill, it's my comfort game. I can listen to audiobooks while I play it. Sometimes I listen to like webinars and lectures while I play it, and it's like my childhood in a game. Thank you very much for watching, and subscribe for more bookish chats. Bye!